Welcome back to the Healthy Youth Ministry Podcast. We're excited to release a series of episodes called Stronger Together, where we invite voices from youth ministries, leaders, experts from across the country to have a conversation about healthy youth ministry. And so I'm excited for you and your teams to get into new content. Now, as always, if you would, it would mean the world to us if you took a few minutes to leave a rating, leave a review, share this content with other leaders and youth pastors in your sphere of influence. That's going to help us increase our impact here and around the world. And lastly, if you've yet to sign up and register for the National Conference in October, hosted here at Oaks Church in South Dallas, go to hymconference.com to get you and your team signed up. Well, here we go. It's time to get better. It's time to get stronger together. So let's lock in. Let's get leaned in to have a conversation about healthy youth ministry.
Hey, welcome back to our Stronger Together edition of the Healthy Youth Ministry Podcast. We say it all the time here at Healthy Youth Ministry. We are stronger together. And in these series of episodes, I'm joined with youth ministry practitioners, leaders in their field, and we're just talking about what it looks like to come together and do ministry because we're stronger together. And so with me today is my friend, the Youth Alive director for North Texas. You're going to hear more about what Youth Alive is. My friend Jackson Sandifer.
What's up, man? I'm pumped to be on here.
Man, I'm pumped that you're on here as well. Jackson's been a friend of mine for years, and you're going to get to hear a little bit more about that. But Jackson, I just want all of our listeners, everyone watching, who's Jackson? Where are you from? You know, how did you get to the point that you are today? And again, this isn't like extremely long format of podcasting, right. We're not going to be here all day. It's like when you go on a mission trip where you like have a post debrief with students, and you know it's bad when they're like on Monday, and you're like, oh no.
And they're going day by day of the testimony.
As a parent, I kind of enjoy that kind of detail, but when you're doing the math, you're like, okay, that student took 15 minutes.
You have 30 students.
We're in trouble. But I do want you to share.
I won't do that.
Just, man, who's Jackson, where you're from, and what you're doing today, all those kind of fun things.
Well, on December 27th, 1992, I was born.
Nice.
I'm just kidding.
You can, man, so birthday coming up. You guys can shoot him a text.
No, so grew up right down the road from Oaks Church, Midlothian / Cedar Hill. That's kind of like stomping grounds. Graduated from
Texas, South Texas, South Dallas. Sorry, North Texas, South Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So grew up in Texas. Graduated from a school, Midlothian High School, which not a lot of people will know unless you're from Texas. But then started going to a youth ministry that was in Duncanville, Texas, another smaller city.
Did you start going like when you were in high school?
I started going in the 8th grade, was invited by a friend from the neighborhood. So not even from school. It was just
That's cool.
Hey, come. He was older than me, so he would pick me up every single Wednesday.
Wow.
So there's obviously a sermon in that and everything. He would pick me up every single Wednesday. My first service was like, it wasn't Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, but it was like that. It was an illustrative. You remember when illustrative sermons were like huge? It was.
And for some of our listeners, Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames was like you could probably Google it. It was like a dramatic.
It was corny
drama that a lot of churches did, and it was like, you die and you're either going to heaven or hell.
Yeah, literally.
Heaven's Gates or Hell's Flames. That's a choice. But that was your first week?
It was like my first week. And but I started going from that.
Come on, you chose Heaven's Gates, bro.
I mean, I didn't give my life to Jesus.
Not yet.
Not
Okay,
yet,
all right.
But I kept going because of relationship that I had built. Ended up giving my life to Jesus at a summer camp. I got saved. Filled with the Holy Spirit and called into ministry all in the same week.
How old were you then? Like
I was 16.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you came a few years just attending.
Yeah. On and off.
I have friends. He's going to bring me. And
I always felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I would be crying during service, but I would never like fully give my life to Jesus until like that moment. So
that's awesome. I know we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit here, but I just think that you lead from your story. Mm-hmm. And so all the youth pastors and youth leaders or next gen leaders listening, just know like your story, it doesn't just inform you, it shapes you, and so even for you later down the road, like some of those things are such an important part of your life. But so anyway, you get saved, get called, your calling gets commissioned through the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and boom, so now you're a high school student.
Yeah, so then interned with my youth pastor because I didn't know what else to do. Long story short, ended up going to a Bible college, SAGU, now Nelson University. But during that time, my youth pastor left to go be a chaplain in the military. So I was his right-hand guy, so I just filled in the need. We didn't have a youth pastor. They were like, hey, can you just kind of make sure the ship doesn't totally sink? And I was like, yeah, I'll try. I was 19 years old. And then when I was 20, in my last year of SAGU, they offered me the youth pastor position. So I was able to youth pastor in the church that I got saved in for 9 years.
That's awesome.
And then about 3 years ago, I transitioned into this Youth Alive position. And we'll hit that part of the story, but it was because of the impact we saw in the schools and those things. And
it was like you were preparing for that role almost without you even knowing it. So got saved in this church. You get to go back and youth pastor at that same church. That's pretty cool.
I still attend that church.
And you also, did you meet your wife at that church as well?
Yeah, I met my wife.
You are married,
I am married, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm married to my wife, Christina. No kids. We have a golden doodle dog.
That's close to a kid. That's literally, they're pretty human-like.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of freaky.
Yeah, seriously.
Always call them magna doodles.
Literally.
Yeah.
So we're married. We'll be married 10 years in February.
Go.
So
congrats, man.
But
you guys going anywhere?
Bro, we're trying to go to Europe.
All right.
Literally, but we're trying to work it out.
That's cool. All right.
But
hope that wasn't a surprise.
No.
Okay.
It's like, hey, Christina, don't watch this podcast.
That's right. Don't listen to this.
No.
So that's super cool. Youth ministry, 9 years. And what's cool for all of our listeners, Jackson and I's lives kind of intertwine. First off, our church, Oaks Church, that I youth pastored at, and now serve here again. It's kind of the home base for Healthy Youth Ministry. It's a regional youth ministry and church, and so we'd have students from Midlothian, Red Oak, Waxahachie, kind of all these towns, in this area. So I was kind of joking with Jackson that he lived, I would have become the youth pastor here your senior year of high school.
Yeah.
But he never came over. He never.
Never.
We weren't doing it.
And I knew a lot of people that went
underclassmen. Well, there was a couple of kids your age too, but yeah, we started picking up some Midlothian students then. So
lots of.
But Jackson was loyal to the house.
Come on,
that's right.
I'm no flake.
That's right. We were talking about before we jumped on the air of that a lot of people in massive regions like this can kind of church jump around a little bit, but not Jackson.
No,
he was committed.
Yes.
I don't care what's going on over there. It's this is where I'm at.
This is home. This is home.
But man, so what's cool though is when Jackson did become a youth pastor, what I love about you, and you still have this a part of you, is your commitment to growth and learning. And Jackson hit me up one time. I was like, hey bro, can I spend? It was 2 days.
Yeah, I remember. I was so nervous. I emailed you and I was like, hey, I remember, I don't remember, somebody probably told me this or a podcast, but they're like, make it easy for that person. I was like, hey, I'll buy you lunch. I will come to you. I just want to follow you around. And I was with you for 2 days on a Wednesday and then a Thursday afterwards, just taking it in because I wanted to learn. I wanted to get better. I never wanted to be the lid of our ministry.
Yeah.
And obviously, I knew great things were happening at Oaks Youth. You see it on Instagram, but I want to see behind the curtain a little bit. So I remember that. That was a huge thing for me to do, and a huge growth point as well.
No, I say that it's not like a coaching plug, but it's more of to me, great leaders. I still do it today, but I remember being a young leader, finding guys in my region. Who's at a place I want to be when it comes to growth and impact and all those things, and then doing what you did. I'm going to go learn from you. I'm cool. Can you give me that? Sure, you can have that. Say that's the way.
I ripped so much.
But to me, that's a part of growth. And I remember even some of your questions and the conversations we had. you're ultimately going, okay, I love even you saying Instagram, because I think Instagram, it's the, kind of like, it's the highlight reel. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much behind the scenes.
Right.
And you became a student of youth ministry and growth. And so I just think that that's still a part of who you are. You're a learner. You want to grow, and just, man, super proud of where you're at today. But I think a big part of that is you as a young leader committing to, hey, there's things I don't know. How can I get around others that do? And so anyway, super impressed by that, even at a young age for you. But you step into Youth Alive. Tell our listeners what Youth Alive is, and it's a national ministry,
right?
And there's different expressions of that in different regions of the nation. And so talk about kind of what that role is for you, what you oversee, what you do. And that's really going to get into our conversation today, because we're continuing this dialogue of occupying all schools. And you're going to hear a little bit about Jackson, not just what he does for Youth Live, but both of our commitment of being present in schools. And so tell our listeners and everyone watching, what is Youth Alive? What's that role? You've been in it for 3 years, which I always say 3 years is about when you finally start seeing culture starting to happen. And you would say
we're starting.
You're starting to see fruit.
Yeah.
And so tell me what Youth Alive is and what you do.
Yeah, in short, Youth Alive North Texas, and I say that because, like you said, it's a national ministry in a lot of places and areas, but what we focus on is equipping and sending students to go start Jesus clubs, to go reach their friends, share the gospel, to be missional, but also we're helping coach and train youth pastors to go from attractional youth ministry to missional. You said it, Terry Parkman has said it, to quote a few people, of like the attractional model, and you just did a podcast on it with Andrew Prescott, but the attractional model is dead. We have to create missional youth ministry. So we just come in and we also give handles for youth pastors on not just how do I send my students, not just how do I have a missional mindset and culture, all that's needed, but how do I, as the youth pastor, lead the way? And that's one of our pillars when it comes to missional youth ministries, is the youth pastor has to go first.
Yeah, you're right.
So for us, one of our biggest pillars is, are you modeling what you're preaching? Are students seeing you in the high school? And when I was a youth pastor and I started doing that, I know we're about to get into that conversation, something shifted in our youth ministry, but also just in our students' brains and hearts and spirits, because they were like, when they saw me at the school, they're like, oh, shoot, like, this is real. Oh, shoot, this is...
He's not just Jackson on a youth night. He's now in my space.
He's in my world. He's in my world. Like, this gives me ownership. This gives me accountability, but it also gives me buy-in.
It's good
to be like, oh yeah, like I can say what I'm saying because I'm there. You see me there. I'm not just telling you that. So
tell me some of the things you say. I think there's a shift in perspective when a student sees a youth pastor or youth leader in their space. But tell me, for you, even though you're a young leader, because I tell people, man, after you're out of high school, culture is moving so fast. So you might be like a young 20-year-old youth pastor, but you're like, oh, wait, the things that I thought were cool, the things I thought were relevant 2 years ago aren't the case anymore. So
I didn't know what Skibbity was 2 years ago. Like, that's
a new that's a Gen Alpha.
I know, but it's a thing.
But yeah, because culture's drastically changing. So for you to get back into that space, be around students, and we'll talk a little bit more about like being in a locker room, but just being on campus.
I mean,
what are some things you're like that you started learning that even started shaping how you did youth ministry on your night of youth ministry?
I think, and I just made a post about this on my Instagram today, it reminds you of the true lostness and rawness of the world that we're reaching. It's no longer, it takes the glamorization out of youth ministry, if I'm making sense, right? We're really good at glamorizing youth ministry. Through conferences, through social media, through whatever. Like, and that's great. Like, we need all that, but like at the end of the day, when I would walk into this to a school, my hands would start sweating. My heart would start beating. But also I would see the brokenness and the lostness of what we're really fighting against. and why I'm fighting against it. Why am I in youth ministry?
Yeah.
Why are you still doing youth ministry stuff 22 years, right? 23, come on, Jordan here.
Yeah, come on.
But like, why? It's not glamorous, but it's worth it. And for me, that's what it did. Stepping foot on a campus allowed me to have perspective of, okay, I have in my youth service because of this. I'm preaching this because of that student. Oh, I'm doing a Gatorade drop, or I'm starting a Jesus club because of that. Not just to say I do it.
Yeah.
Because I think, so that for me, that's what I would say being on the campus does.
Yeah, to me, it's like to reach the community, you got to be in the community.
Yes.
And so I remember as a young youth pastor going to schools, doing like, if they had an FCA or a Christian club, I'd come speak. And then back in the early 2000s, you could go and do lunch. Certain schools won't let you do that today, but be on school and lunch. And then I would always go dab students up in the student section at school events. And I remember, which is crazy, it was like a high school hockey game. There was a hockey team, a couple of schools in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma? There's a hockey team.
Yeah, it's wild, right? And so I'm hanging out with these students, and they're passing, I see this like foam, like Sonic cup being passed, and as it passed, I'm like, wait a second, that does not smell like a cherry limeade. So, but I realized in that moment, this is the world that our students are in.
Yeah.
And then you start hearing the tragic stories. And now, like, again, 23 years later, my kids, I have 2 students out of high school, 1 currently in high school. And even this last week when this was recorded, my daughter going, hey, there's a lot of threats with our school. And, I don't know if I want to go to school. And because there's been a lot of like social media threats and shootings and stuff in the DFW, and school shootings have continued to be. And that's something that's the reality. So if you're just, getting ready for your sermon and what game are we going to play this week, but you're not on campus or in tune with what's going on, you miss, I'm on our night, we're giving something to students they actually don't want. But when you get on campus, you're like, so that sermon series, dude, that doesn't even matter compared to what they're going through right now.
Yeah.
What can we do to really connect with students in that way? And so, anyway, you have some more to add there?
I was just at a football game last Friday. After the football game, a student from the school that I'm a chaplain at, that I'm a character coach, that I just left today, was shot and killed.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, they don't care.
I was in a gas station across the street. Yeah.
They don't, and I've told youth pastors this, that they're like, help me. I'm like, they don't care how big your church is.
Yeah.
They don't care how cool you dress.
Yeah.
They don't care. They really don't. Like they just, and I cannot just like repeat that enough of like, they just don't care. They care, are you real?
Yeah.
And are you going to stay?
Yeah.
And do you actually love them?
Yeah.
Or do you love taking the selfie pictures and the locker room pics or whatever? So I would just say to somebody that's listening, it's like, stop caring. And this isn't even in the notes, but it's like stop caring. They don't care about any of that stuff. And I think that's another thing that being on the campus did for me.
Yeah.
Of like, none of this youth ministry culture thing matters at the end of the day.
When you're in it, it helps you recalibrate.
Yeah, that's a good word.
If you've ever done any sort of prison ministry, you've ever been in a space where you're like, I've had the opportunity to be in a couple of spaces like that, and to see joy at a prison service.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, how? It helps you recalibrate to be like, wait, joy's not circumstantial.
Yeah.
And so, but I say that to go like, it helps you have perspective. And you think about mission trips. But you and I would both agree that the greatest mission field is the local school.
100%.
And so, cool, youth pastor, if you go to another country or you're doing some, like inner city, sidewalk, dream center. I love all those things. I think they're good. But the greatest mission field is the local school.
Yeah.
And something I always say is get in where you fit in. So connect with the school, like what your passion, your story. Yeah. And so something that you and I have done for years is really connecting to the football team. Now in Texas, for all of our listeners, like football is
king.
It's king. It really is. It's like on a Friday night, doesn't matter the size of town, the town shuts down. It's what you've seen on Friday Night Lights. It is real.
Literally.
It really happens. and people, they love high school football. And so that's where it's a community gathering that's happening. And I just realized, man, that's where I would want to be. And it's the largest team. The football team and the band are the two largest groups of people. And so how can we make an impact? And there's different sports that you and I both work with.
Sure.
But talk about how you got in to being a character coach, or just even, we've stopped using the word chaplain, but some cultures in NFL but like have used that. But you become like this pastor for a team.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about what that's looked like for you. You've done it now for how many years at Duncanville?
9 years.
9 years at Duncanville. Have won a couple state championships.
I got 3 state rings, 2 with the football team, 1 with the girls basketball team.
Go.
So I should have brought them.
Just showed them off, like your Bill Belichick. So help our listeners, because a lot of times, even going back to where like, hey, you don't have you don't have to be cool, just show up, be present.
Exactly.
And so that's, for me as a young leader, I remember going, oh man, this is, well, they think, and you just got to show up. Yep. So show up. That if you don't hear anything, just figure it out in the sense of show up, talk to a principal, talk to a teacher, and ask the question, how can I serve you?
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
But for us, I've always felt like if I can win coaches, I can win players.
Yep.
And so just talk a little bit about, for you, what's that look like in the 9 years you've been working with the football team, and the fruit you saw as a youth pastor in that, but just how'd you get into it? Because I think that's where a lot of guys, there's like, oh
get
man,
hung up.
How'd you do that? And a part of it is like being consistent, being present. But give us kind of your version of how you got involved in local high school like that.
First, I just want to say, for context purposes, I still do this today, and I'm not even a local church youth pastor.
Yeah.
I'm at a regional scale.
Regional role. You're at different youth ministries all the time.
Yeah.
But you've made a priority
But
to
I've made
continue.
this a priority for the last 3 years to still, literally today, I texted you, hey, I can do this podcast, but it's after football practice.
Yeah.
I handed out Gatorade. I dapped up, hugged students. They were sweaty. Said what's up to coaches. I was just talking to the athletic trainer. He literally said this today. He's like, you've been here forever. And I'm like, and I'm not saying that to flex. I'm saying that as like,
it's a big deal.
We were going back. He's like, how long have you been here? I was like, since 2015. He's like, man. And we did the math. He's like, you've outlasted 4 ADs.
Wow.
3 or 4 school principals. 2 superintendents. You're still here.
Wow.
And I'm just, for context purposes of like, I'm still doing this. And also, I think the number one rule, you already said it, get in where you fit in. I think the key word there is fit in.
Yeah.
So like, if you're not athletic, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't go do the football team.
Yeah.
Go do the band. Go do the theater department. Go do the choir. I know people, and I've coached people to go and literally figure out a way to, if you're not bringing Gatorades, dude, bring snacks to the choir, to theater, to
popsicles to the band.
Yeah.
I always say popsicles because
we did water drops.
Gator,
we did water drops to the band just because Duncanville band is 700 kids. We couldn't afford Gatorade. So like we're like, hey, you're doing 2-a-days for band right now. Let us come drop water. And we had students in the band, right? So I would just say, key word there, fit in.
Yeah.
So what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What do you know about?
Yeah.
So that it's not this weird, awkward thing, because then you won't last 9 years.
Yeah.
So I would say start there. What are you passionate about? What do you know about? Maybe what did you do in high school?
Yeah.
Right? Another thing for me, if I'm going to tell you kind of how I got in, it's like story-based. God spoke to me and said, I want you to be youth pastor, not just of your youth ministry, but of your city.
Yeah.
And at the time I was 3 years in, and I felt like we were crushing it in terms of kids were coming, and I was like, what do you mean, God? The city needs to come here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that mentality. I was a young guy. We were doing pretty well, grew the thing. He's like, no, I want you to go. And I showed up to a middle school with a box of donuts and didn't really know like what to do.
Yeah.
But Danny Noah, Danny Noah, you were just with him last week, and he was like, show up to this middle school, and they put me with the middle school girls basketball team.
Yeah.
So I just, again, guys, I didn't start with the state champion Duncanville football team. I started with an 8th grade girls basketball team.
Yeah.
And I showed up with donuts every single Wednesday morning at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And we started to talk. They started to ask questions. We started doing Bible studies. Then the boys came.
Yeah.
And I always tell people it wasn't because of me. It was because of the girls, and it was because of the donuts, right?
Yeah, right.
So now we're doing it with both. And I started building a relationship with that coach. And that coach then went from there to the freshman girls team at the high school. She's like, I want you coming with me.
Yeah.
So then I was doing both. I was doing middle school, and I was doing freshman every morning.
Yeah.
I think the middle school moved to Tuesday, and I was showing up 7 a.m. Wednesday morning for her freshman girls team, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it as short as I can, but through connection.
And nothing wrong with girls teams. He's just saying, hey.
No, I'm just saying I didn't start with
here you are,
at
some
this
youth
pinnacle.
pastors. You're like, oh, and you're like, hey, this is the door that opened.
Fit in.
Yeah, and fit in. Like, hey, this is the door that opened, but also walk into that,
Exactly.
and step into that. So
yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
That. So was doing both of those in that season. I started going to lunchrooms as well. I filled out a volunteer application form so that they could background check me. They're like, "What are you here for?" I was like, "Oh, I just want to clean up the lunchrooms."
Yeah.
They're like, "No, like really?" I'm like, "No, really." So I would show up every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay. All I would do is for lunches, I would clean up lunchrooms with the janitorial staff after every lunch. Now, during lunch, I'm dapping up students. Can I tell you, little school hack tip? You want to know how I connected with principals? In the lunchroom.
Yeah.
I didn't set meetings with principals.
Yeah.
They don't want to do
another
that.
meeting.
They don't want another meeting. But guess what? They saw me clean. They're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I go to Crossroads of Life. I'm the youth pastor there.
Yeah.
I'm just here cleaning."
Yeah.
Okay. They see me the next week cleaning.
Yeah.
They see me the next week cleaning.
Yeah.
They see me the next. So they're like, "What else do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I do this. I'm doing this. Anything you need, let me know." They ended up giving me my own badge.
Nice.
Where I didn't have to check in. I could just flash that badge. They open up the door.
Yeah.
Security guards knew me.
And that's consistency.
Yeah, it's just, weekly.
Because something, we haven't even got to football yet, but
I'm sorry.
I was going to say something I've always told guys. You can make a splash or you can make a wave.
Yeah.
And the difference is consistency.
Yeah.
And so a lot of guys are like, "Oh man, that sounds great, Jackson. I'm going to go show up next week. Hey, because washing those tables is a big deal because no one wants, a teacher hates having cafeteria duty,
Yeah.
And so you're coming in, you're helping serve, you're helping lift. It's one thing to do that 1 week.
Yeah.
It's the second week, the third week, the fourth week, and that's consistency is what draws attention to like people pay attention to consistency.
They notice it
because it really is. I always say how you get in the Hall of Fame in any sport is consistency.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have made highlights and they're they might go viral, but they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Like Jeremy Lin. Remember Jeremy Lin?
Yeah, man. Insanity, bro. And so, but the thing is, a lot of times in ministry, we do the same thing. We make a splash, we have a big event, and it's not the legacy leadership and the life that really makes a massive kingdom impact. And again, it's one step at a time. And I think you even said something like, "Hey, they're not just coming here, I'm going there." And a question I've always asked youth pastors and even churches, if your church was to not be in your community, would people notice?
Yeah.
Or if you as a youth pastor weren't in your community, they wouldn't notice. And the thing is, for the last 9 years, if now you weren't there to show up on a Friday night, people are like, "Where's Jackson?"
Literally.
And because I know there's been a couple of events you've had to not be able to be at because of your new role.
Yep.
And that question is because of consistency.
Yeah. A coach, we're about to get into football, and I know I'm telling the story, but I want to just give context and detail. Coach is like, "Yo, when I see Gatorade, I know we're going to be okay." I literally said that today because they look for the white ice chest on Thursday at the corner. So was doing lunchrooms, whatever, got connected to the Duncanville coach, called him up, was like, "Hey, I want to do Gatorades." I never met I met him once very briefly. Long pause. He's like, "Yeah, you can come. I need 350 Gatorades." I was like, I didn't plan for this. I didn't budget for this, but I called my senior pastor. I was like, "Hey, I have to go buy 350 Gatorades." So we come rolling up with 3 big ice chests of Gatorades. It's freshman, varsity, JV. It's everything. It's everybody. And I'm thinking revival is about to hit. I'm like, "Come on." And dude, they took those Gatorades, didn't even say thank you. And I was like, almost like, frustrated. I was like, "Man, what is this?" But I showed up. every Thursday
Yeah.
for the last 9 years,
Yeah.
giving Gatorades. The year after that, nothing happened. I never asked for anything.
Yeah.
I just gave Gatorades. The next season, he says, hey, I want you to start speaking to the team before the game.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, yeah. So I've been speaking to the team before the games for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Was doing that, and this is the crazy part. So this is longevity. This is consistency.
Yeah.
One day I was speaking to the team before the game. I went down, be on the sidelines, had my Bible in my hand. A guy comes up to me, and he starts talking to me. We're playing an out-of-state team. And he's like, what do you do here? I tell him, hey, I'm this, trying to reach as many of these kids as I possibly can. He's like, that's awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Turns back, passes me. I'm like, hey, my name's Jackson. He's like, oh, my name's Denny. It's Denny Duran.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know who Denny Duran was.
Yeah.
Some people might,
Yeah.
whatever. But Denny Duran
Pastor,
apparently was
coach.
a big deal,
Yeah.
but he's like into football. He has
Yeah.
his own Netflix show now,
Yeah.
but he was a big pastor. He's Don Scher's dad.
Yeah.
So anyway, just to give people context, but he turns back around and he says, "Hey Jackson," I look back again. I don't know who this guy is. He gives me a prophetic word on the football field. He says, "God's going to give you 2, and you're going to see a move of God here in Duncanville."
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know who you are.
2 students. Yeah.
2 students, but I start praying over that word. Our whole team did. Well, a few months later, 2 students that we had been ministering to, that were both on the football team,
Yeah.
get radically saved. One of them was one of the boy basketball players from the middle school days,
Wow.
3 or 4 years ago. And every time he'd be like, I'm going to come to church. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, come. But they came to church. Life got turned, flipped upside down, filled with the Holy Spirit. They go back to their school. They start winning their friends to Jesus. They start winning their football team. They start a Jesus club in their football locker room after practice. I just show up with pizza, cookies, but they're leading it. This is a crazy story. They're leading their friends to Jesus. In one semester, we baptized 38 students in water from the schools, which was big for our youth ministry. I think we never grew above, when I was there, 150. So at that time we're probably right around 100. So that's like huge. 38 students we baptized. Coaches came to see it. Teachers came to see it. The principals came to see it because they knew what was happening. We saw a football player that had a heart condition. He wasn't going to be able to play football his senior year. He comes to our youth ministry because the friends that had been ministered to, and because of consistency, he knew who I was. He came.
Knew where to go.
Our whole youth ministry prayed over him. He goes back to the same doctor. Clean report, right? He goes to Missouri to play. He just got drafted to the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, come on.
So I mean, it's just.
And his story is intertwined. I mean, you told me you're even hitting him up.
I'm hitting him up.
Look at God, what a miracle,
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. So it's just, again, how did I do it? I made a phone call.
Yeah.
I got in where I fit in. I said, even if it's not the football team, God graced me to be a part of that. But even if it wasn't, guess what? I was doing girls varsity basketball.
Yep.
I was doing girls freshman basketball.
Yeah.
I was doing boys basketball on and off. I was in the lunchrooms.
Yeah.
I was just there, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? Just start.
Yeah. I think that youth ministries we've lost in the church, to me as a whole, is what I would call the ministry of presence. And I think that's what we're talking about. How do you reach your school? Yes. And again, go to the last Stronger Together episode. Andrew and I go deep into the mindset and the model of Jesus clubs, and that's something that Jackson and Andrew have been rolling with for the last few years. But another thing is just you as a youth pastor knowing what's going on in your school. And Jackson said it, the Gatorade. I know typically we always say that we are unofficially sponsored. We get nothing from Celsius, but we drink them on every episode.
I love these.
A statement, because we started doing Gatorades. I started doing Gatorades in the early 2000s, and it was a big part of what we did at Oaks Youth. And we were on 7 different campuses every single week.
Yeah.
Again, consistency. And I saw it time and time again in the statement. It's kind of a sticky statement, but Gatorade opens the door to the gospel. And
Powerade, the power of God.
That's right.
I just added that one.
And but Gatorade opens the door to the gospel. And for us, it was Gatorade, and then a new coach came into town. Our story, Christian coach, and they're like, hey, we need someone to do a coach's Bible study. I was actually working at a different school, but we were doing Gatorade, so I started doing Coach's Bible Study. Then next thing you knew, kind of like what you're doing, I started showing up to practice more.
Yeah.
Then we started a Bible study. Then we started a chapel service. And we started seeing kids get water baptized and lives changed. And so it's, again, you're playing the long game. And if it's just 2.
Yep.
I've had seasons that we didn't have any of those football players showing up. But I still showed up every week. But you know where I would see them? In the community. As they become adults.
That's right.
Guess who they were hitting up? And so, again, that's that mindset of, man, we want to reach people. We want to grow the kingdom.
Yeah.
And even if they get saved here and end up going to another church, man, we're committed to that. And being in that space is just such a big deal. And so, Jackson, I just want to honor you. You've done such a great job. Thank you for modeling it. I know it's something I'm very passionate about as well. But wherever that is, you have to just hear Jackson's story. Finding, I always say shepherds smell like sheep. So kind of do the sniff test, and build that rapport with coaches. I love even the question that there's like, how long have you been here? I remember when we were working with DeSoto, after they won the state championship in 2016, the defensive coordinator comes, under the stadium, and he just said, guys, he was talking to Antonio and I, and he was like, guys, just thank you for always showing up. Like he was, I think, shocked because in our world, there's not a lot of consistency.
There's not.
And when you're working with schools, people are trying to get something out. And we could talk about kind of, these podcasts aren't designed, these Stronger Together podcasts aren't designed to give you 3 points and 2 points. But we could probably do a whole podcast on here's the 10 things not to do.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of youth ministries that have kind of hurt other churches getting involved in the campus because they came in there trying to build their youth ministry instead of trying to help that school. And if you do it right, it actually you get to help the school and it will help build your youth ministry.
Yeah, because God's going to bless what's on his heart.
Yeah.
Those schools are on his heart.
You're right.
And if you're being a good steward of that, well, he can trust you with sending somebody to your ministry or, whatever it might be and whatever that is.
And I love the kind of the evolution of your story. Hey, I started serving, in the junior high, then for football, and that's how, again, for me, I've moved to new towns, and I just sent an email. Hey, coach, would love to give you guys Gatorade. 9 out of 10 times, really, to be honest, it's been 10 out of 10 for me.
They're not going to say no.
No, and they're pumped. And like you said, though, dude, coaches, players, they're pumped for that Gatorade. And so you start off with Gatorade, and then you start just every week. And they're like, oh, he's going to be here every Tuesday or every Thursday. And then other things start happening. Then students start getting closer to Jesus. Then you start mobilizing students to live on mission and reach their campus. So we're not asking you, youth pastor or leader, you go be the hero. That's not the goal. But go be alongside them. Understand, I understand the pain you're going through. Yeah. I understand the struggle you're going through because I'm in it with you.
That guide from the side.
That's right.
Type thing, right?
Not a sage on the stage.
Yeah,
be a guy on the side. And be in it with them. And
you're in these trenches, these streets with me.
Yeah.
Like these are hard kids to reach.
Yeah. And they feel that pain there. And so big believer, consistent presence, get in where you fit in, keep showing up, play the long game, man, and you're gonna make an impact on not just those students, but you're going to see families. That's something that we saw. We saw, I think generations will be changed because of just showing up with some Gatorade and figuring that out. And I'll just say for some of you, like, well, I don't have the budget for that. Find people in your church, find people in your community that would donate those Gatorades. There's so many things that I could unpack for you, and I know you can unpack on the practical side of this, but it's all about just putting it on your calendar. We talked about this on a few episodes because I'm so passionate about it. Man, what gets on the calendar gets done. Yep. So for you, every Thursday,
it's there.
I know, hey, I'm at this school. I got to go get Gatorade. I got to ice them down, all that kind of stuff. And so that's going to happen because it's on my calendar. And a lot of guys, even for me, because I would drive past the school and I could come in the mornings, dab up a couple of coaches, and I was just there 15 minutes. But for the coach, like, man, Joseph's all the time around here. No, actually, I'm not. I just made it a part of my week and was a part of their life. And I'll just say this, coaching is a lonely, it is a hard.
On families, on marriages.
It's a lot. And so for you as a youth pastor to come in and be an Aaron and her and lift the arms of that coach, that's a big deal too. So we've talked a long time. way longer than I thought.
Sorry.
Because we could talk forever on this. Man, can you give, I guess, your, I don't want to call it a commercial, but what God's doing in Jesus Clubs right now across this region is incredible. Again, listen to the last podcast. But yes, youth pastor, get involved, show up. That was our big heart behind this, because we're going to have another episode on our Stronger Together and talking about even another kind of layer that you can do in the schools. But we've talked about Jesus Clubs. We've talked about kind of, for us, this character coaching, being present with sports teams or even theater or choir. Like, just know that there's groups of students. Get in there, serve them, and then from there, see what God does. But a big next step is then to mobilize those students for them to reach their friends, because those two reach the masses. Yeah. You were just present. You were someone to help them. And so I guess maybe the question would be, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in Jesus Clubs. Yeah. And how missional mobilization is really what's making the difference in a lot of these youth ministries.
I'll say this. They work great hand in hand.
Yeah.
So, like,
I agree.
Seeing a youth pastor there, but having a Jesus Club there is just that much better and that much stronger.
Well, because you can actually send a student, like we used to do a little bit with small groups, but so I meet Jackson, you're a football player, we're connecting, but if I know there's a Jesus Club, you don't even have to go to my service yet.
We did that, yeah.
You know, and it's like, hey, Tuesday morning, or like you said, or if it's a sports version one, that's even better. But yeah, it helps them. They don't have to, like, because a lot of the region that you're reaching and some of the regions we're reaching, some of those students don't have vehicles to get to church. So how do we bring church to them? Jesus Clubs.
Yep.
And so, yes, I agree with you. I think it's great that you said that. They work hand in hand. It's not either or. It's both and.
Yeah, and we had two in one school.
Yep.
And I would be like, yo, meet me here. Hey, meet me here. Or meet kids here. But I'll say this, and I'll give a snapshot because I know we've talked a lot. But Jesus Clubs, just this summer, okay, we've seen 900 students that have not just raised their hand saying, oh, I want to do a Jesus Club, but have gone through a training and filled out a Jesus Club VIP board that we call it. So they have a actual plan in place. 900 students.
That's incredible.
Just from this summer. And we have them from Texas, obviously, but different states all across the nation that students are doing that. I'm getting text message every day. I got 3 or 4 today of students or youth pastors saying, hey, I got a student, or I got a student that launched Jesus Club, and I didn't even know they did. Or hey, I got 2 students wanting to do a Jesus Club. Hey, what do we do, or what are we doing? Man, we have a round table coming up to train youth pastors on that. But it's like we're seeing 900 students that are saying, I want to reach my friends. And I always tell youth pastors this, it's our job to steward that yes.
Right.
That's just like a snapshot of what we're seeing. We have so many youth pastors that are hungry. They just don't know how on going from attractional to missional, because attractional is all they know. So that's what we're seeing. I want to be quick with it. I don't want to belabor it, but not just 900 students just from this summer.
Which then that math equals, like, because we know that there's groups of Jesus Clubs that have 100 and there's Jesus Clubs that have 10.
And so we say the average is about 20. That's how we do the math.
Think about the kingdom impact, and really what you're doing is you're mobilizing students to live a missional life on their school. And again, check out the last podcast, and I'm going to let Jackson kind of tell you how you can get a hold of him to talk more, not just about Jesus Clubs, but what it looks like to be on campus. And I've talked about this. I know a lot of people, a big part of my story, you and I have that same passion. What's fun is over the years, Jackson and I get to dab each other up on the sidelines, which is always fun. And to be honest, you may tell you what's cool is when you're in, I felt that when I was in Oklahoma too, is when you have a lot of other youth pastors living that life, is you get to have that fun banter. And it's cool to look across and go, oh, this youth pastor's from this region, and they're at this football game. And they're not just at the football game, they're on the sidelines of this football game. They're right there in the middle of it. And I just think that's a massive deal. I will advocate for it. I just think that you need to be present. Jesus was present. I think about, like, even those Gatorade drops, I always say it's like the modern day water well. And that people can come and find out really who they are. And so, but you can't think about that moment with Jesus and the woman at the well, that it didn't make sense. and Jesus is talking to her about a thirst, that she can have, that she won't thirst again.
Yeah.
And so it's a gathering point, and the modern day water well in sports is a bucket full of Gatorades, and so being there. So I'm a big believer in it. But then to take them on that journey of what it looks like to help these students live on mission, and that you talk about it, and even the attraction. I always say there's like incentive culture and invite culture. And I think sometimes like, hey, we're giving away or whatever, but over time, you can always tell that you're incentive culture when students are saying, what are we giving away this week? You're like, oh, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's not. But if you teach them to invite, you teach them to live on mission, it doesn't mean you don't have services that aren't excellent. And continue to do that.
Yeah.
But it becomes the student's ministry. And again, thank you, Jackson. There's so much we could have done. We could have done like 8 episodes.
Dude, we should.
And so, so tell everybody how they can get a hold of you to learn more about Jesus Clubs and even what it looks like to occupy what I say, not just all schools, but we used to say occupy all sidelines.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be, and for us, even when I was here in Texas back in the day, we were on 7 different schools, but we adopted one city, Waxahachie, and we had it was all sports.
Yeah.
We were trying, like, how do we have people involved in every sport? We're, from some double or double bubble gum or whatever, baseball
some
teams,
bazooka gum or whatever,
or some seeds, and then we were doing Gatorade with basketball and guys and volleyball, and so we were mobilizing our volunteers to go be kind of those character coaches.
Yeah.
So the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. But you got to see a harvest. You have to be in the field, though.
Yep.
And so get out there in the field and see it happen. So how can people get a hold of you, Jackson?
Yeah. 2 quick tips and tricks.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to hit up the football team. I'm not saying don't go for it, but I am saying you don't know how much faces will light up if you bring Gatorade to a baseball team.
I agree.
To a softball team. To a wrestling team.
Even cross country, what's crazy about even cross country, most cross country people, I know it's wild, they're typically like all of your student council people, all the, so there's a lot of untapped potential in the school if you can connect with them as well.
And as the youth pastor, not your youth ministry, but as the youth pastor, focus in on one school.
Yep,
There's a lot of youth pastors that start getting pulled because they're successful, and then they start trying to split their time, and their effectiveness and impact actually goes down because they're not going deep in one school. They're going wide with a lot. So
roots.
Just a tip for youth pastors.
And I would say this, something I would do is football, I was one school. In spring, I would say, hey, give me your schedule, and I would hit everyone's little spring sport.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I was at the football game, and I'd hit a couple of volleyball games.
Sure.
But I would go one school, same thing. And it upset some people too along the way, but we saw massive fruit, because back in the day, I think I said this on another episode. I would be on the sideline of one team for the first half,
halftime,
and then be on another team the second half. I was like Mr. Roger in the parking lot, changing gears. So,
but how to connect with me? Real simple. I mean, love to coach or just do a phone call. I won't even call it coaching. Just give you some tips, give you some handles, give you some practical things. Youth Alive NTX at northtexas.ag. And then just our Instagram at Youth Alive TX, and then even my personal Instagram at Jackson Sandifer. DM me, talk to me.
Try to get some followers out there,
I just want to connect. Seriously,
hey,
man, do that.
DM Jackson or hit those contacts up, and just even let him know Jesus Clubs or Campus Ministry, so that he knows kind of what you're asking for there. And Healthy Youth Ministry Conference. Have you been to everyone?
Everyone. I went to when you because again, learner. When it wasn't even called Healthy Youth Ministry, it was just like your
the round. It was the Leadership Ministry
your Leadership
Summit.
Ministry Summit. That you started. I went and took notes and learned from it. So I've been at every one.
This is year number 8 that we're doing the conference here, the national conference, and it's coming up soon. You need to register HYMconference.com. And what's cool is every year, there hasn't been a year that we haven't done this because it's such a big passion of mine. We will do a super session that we focus. Jackson, Andrew, Bobby Parks are talking about what it looks like to occupy all schools, and then we're going to do breakouts that will get way more in the nuts and bolts. And so we want to help you. There's a lot of resources I know that Jackson has, and we're going to have a booth there as well for you to connect with Jesus Clubs. We want to help you in reaching your school. But HYM, we go a little deeper. We kind of zoom in a little bit more.
Double tap it.
Yeah, that's right. Double tap. Double click.
Double click. That's what I meant.
At HYM conference. And so make sure you check that out. Jackson, thanks again.
Thank you.
A verse we always say, it's on our outro as well, but Galatians 6:9. Don't get tired of doing good. Jackson's story helped. Like, that is the illustration. I'm going to keep showing up. No one's showing up at youth, but I'm going to keep showing up with Gatorades. I'm going to keep showing up at 7 a.m. for some 8th grade girls basketball. Don't get tired of doing good. At the right time, which is God's time, you'll reap a harvest of blessing if you don't quit. So don't give up. Remember, we're stronger together, so refuse to do life alone. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Youth Ministry podcast. And thank you for investing in your leadership, because the next generation needs you. And we believe healthy youth pastors and leaders are the #1 catalyst for seeing healthy youth ministries. Again, make sure to check out hymconference.com for more information about our national conference on October 14th and 15th. And our final prayer and encouragement to you is this: Galatians 6:9. So let us not grow tired in doing what is good, for at the right time we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. And with that, we will see you next month for another episode of the Healthy Youth Ministry podcast.